started looking at the photographs and seeing the quilts, and they're gorgeous, just gorgeous. So I'm here to introduce Tricia Maloney. Oh, make sure everybody, if you haven't given a card to our very own Jack Beasley or anybody is at the back, get your business cards out. We'll talk for what you need. Tricia, come.
All right, this is a short one, so we're going to talk fast and show a lot of quilts. This is my new book, Russian Journey in Quilts, a story of Nicholas and Nina Filatoff. And in the description in your Schoolhouse Lecture, it says that Nicholas and Nina Filatoff were my grandparents. They're actually very dear friends of my grandparents. Those was a little typo. I am actually not Russian, but I know. But that doesn't matter because these people were so significant in my life, in my grandparents' life, that they might as well have just been family. They met my grandmother when she was a teenager in the 1930s, and it started a lifelong friendship that lasted until 1976, so 40-odd-year friendship, and I think that's pretty cool. But the first quilt we're going to show you today is actually the Russian Journey Sampler, and this quilt incorporates blocks from all the other projects in the book. There are 16 projects, this being the culminating one.
How are we?
You're good. It's actually sideways, but that's okay. It is a big quilt.
Gorgeous.
So this is actually a story quilt. If you actually start at the beginning of the book, and you follow through, and all of the main blocks are in this quilt, and it tells the story of Nicholas and Nina Filatoff. Nicholas and Nina Filatoff were really unique people. They were born in the 1880s in Russia. And my book actually follows their journey until basically their death in 1976. So we've got a whole lot of history happening in there. And you just have to read the book to find out, because it's not only a project book, there is a lot of historical information, there are vintage photographs in the book, and personal family stories also there. So it kind of hits all of the boxes with that one. And I do want to point out this fabric that you see, it's really quite lovely, isn't it? They don't print fabric like this in the United States. This is Russian fabric. I actually ordered this particular fabric online. I had to wait 8 weeks for this fabric to arrive. And boy, I was nervous it wasn't going to show up, because this quilt would have never worked if the fabric hadn't come. But it did, and then all of the other fabrics within this quilt, all the colors were pulled out of this main large print. So, and it is a kind of a vintage fabric. So I like to say that this book actually begins and ends with Russia, because Nicholas and Nina's journey started in Russia, and then I end the book with this quilt with its Russian fabric. So we're going to tuck this one away, and, oh, I almost forgot. I cannot forget to tell you this. As shop owners, you're probably always looking for a new block of the month, right? Well, guess what? This is a block of the month. We have a free download on the Kansas City Star website. You can just go to their website, and in the search button, type in Russian Journey, and you can find the free download. And it will outline a whole block of the month program for you, including all of the notes and the information you need. It's about 8 pages long. It also gives you items in your shop that you already have that you can promote with it, the add-on items. So that's a really neat tie-in. It's got stuff for incentives, how to promote it. Additionally, wouldn't it be great to do this block of the month for 2014? Because the Olympics are in Russia. So I think that'd be a really cool tie-in too, because you can tie in an Olympics party with the Russian book and the whole works. You could try some Russian food. So you'll definitely want to check that out online. But let's get back to Nicholas and Nina for a moment. I need both of these up at the same time. Most of the projects in the book are smaller. We have a couple of throw-size quilts. We have the giant bedside sampler. And then we have assorted other wall quilts and table runners. So it's kind of nice. It's not all large projects. But this is a quilt that represents Nicholas, and the one over there represents Nina. They were both born in the 1880s in Russia. Nina was actually Polish, and Nick was Latvian, but in the 1880s, those were parts of the Russian Empire. And the unique thing about these are, as you'll notice, that the fabrics kind of fit the time period. So if you have reproduction fabrics in your shop, this would work really great because this book not only, it doesn't have the 15 projects and it's got the sampler and everything, the projects are based in different time periods. So the quilts from the 1880s, you know, about their births and their childhoods, use fabric and also quilt blocks that were representational of that time. So when we get into like the 1920s and 1930s, we're also using blocks from the 1920s and 30s and fabric. So if you have lots of reproductions, all the way up to mid-century modern, I mean, you can use any of your fabrics in my book. And with the Block of the Month sampler, you can also use your own fabrics, because I don't have any fabric line or anything like that specified for it. So you can use what you have. And I think that's a really neat selling point. Nicholas and Nina got married in 1911, and this is the quilt that represents that. It's called Courtship and Marriage. You'll probably recognize French General fabrics, which with their French feel, believe it or not, Russia actually was really into French stuff during the imperial years, you know, when the Tsar was in charge and all of that. So a lot of the influences on their clothing, their fabrics, their decorating, even the language they spoke in the Russian court, it was all French. So that's why I went with French fabric for this one. Now, I think you're going to like this. How many people are into Downton Abbey? Yeah, we have some Downton Abbey people. I bet you have customers who are into Downton Abbey too. And if you saw the Downton Abbey presentation this morning, you're probably really hyped about it. Well, guess what? You could use Downton Abbey fabric in these quilt projects too, because they actually overlap. The people in my book, Nicholas and Nina Filatoff, they went through World War I. And if you're familiar with, I think it's season 2 in Downton Abbey, the youngest daughter was a World War I nurse. Well, so was Nina Filatoff. And there's a wonderful, wonderful picture in the book, and I'm sorry I don't have it larger. But there's a fantastic picture of Nina and Nicholas in their uniforms in World War I. But the interesting thing is that this is the Russian side of things, not the English side of things. So we find it really fast here. There it is. And I don't know. I'm actually, you know what? I'm just going to walk this around really fast. It's a fantastic photograph. And I really would have liked to have it much larger for you, but I wasn't sure how to get it here. So it is beautiful. And you'll notice Nicholas is wearing a bandage on his head. That's because he was actually wounded in World War I in one of the very early battles. He was shot in the head. He actually had craniotomy in 1914, and he survived, which I think is really quite fascinating. So we have a quilt for Nina, being a Red Cross nurse, and we have a quilt for Nicholas, who was actually a captain in the Russian Army. But of course, as we know from our history lessons, that during World War I, we had the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. And the Bolsheviks took over, the Tsar's family was obliterated, and Russia basically was thrust into chaos. And that's what this quilt represents. This is called Panic, Revolution, and the Volunteer Army. And I chose the very stark red and black color scheme just to demonstrate, you know, what was going on at that time. It does have a nickname. We call this the Blood and Guts quilt, but I think that actually really does demonstrate it. What I love about it is, although it's based in the right time period, I mean, and red and black fabrics were being used at that time, it's actually a very modern quilt. So if you have customers who are into modern quilts, there you go. Now this particular quilt has received a lot of interest, and this really surprised me because this is not my usual style of a quilt. It has 2 fabrics in it, and they're very low intensity and very little contrast between the fabrics, but this is the one that people seem to look at and stop mostly, and I don't know why. people just really seem to go with for this quilt. This is called Constantinople. Once the Bolshevik Revolution happened, Nicholas was actually imprisoned by the Bolsheviks for a while, and he was eventually given amnesty through, I would imagine, a prisoner exchange program. And then he joined the volunteer army, which we know as the White Army, because the Bolsheviks were considered the Red Army. So he fought against the Bolsheviks, but eventually they were backed down into a corner, and they couldn't go anywhere, so they evacuated hundreds of thousands of Russians to Constantinople, and that's Constantinople. And we're going to have to move a little quicker here. We're just going to show you quilts. If you want to hear the rest of the story, you've got to get the book. And this one's upside down. So you can tell we're up to the 1930s now, can't you? But this is called, would you believe, sometimes I forget the names of my quilts. Thank you, Home of Their Own. That's why the label's on the back. It's so helpful. But this is actually one of my favorite quilts because it's so happy. And it's very scrappy. And if you have those 1930s fabrics in your collection, then you've just got to try this out. We've got another one. Thank you. I quilted this one myself. And we have this lovely chicken quilt. This was actually pieced by my best pal Leslie here. You can never create a quilt book without having a whole bunch of quilting friends. It just doesn't happen. So we're just going to hurry up and show you the rest of these.
Upside down.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing. You just can't turn the right side up either. There we go. Here's one that represents their blending of their new American life with their Russian past. Mid-century modern. Got to have a little mid-century modern. And this represents when they actually lost their home. And the last quilt, it's called Peace at Last. And the applique and the piecing was done by this young lady sitting over here in the corner, Kathy Laird. And this actually tells the end of the story. And you're just going to have to read the book because I'm running out of time. So I really hope you look into it. And don't forget, it has a block of the month program guide. So if you're looking for something different.
Are you doing a book signing?
Yes, we're doing a book signing at the Kansas City Star booth, booth number 2046.
What time?
Tomorrow at 2:45.
Thank you.